Right, welcome back to Cast Me to Hell with me, Seb.
And with me, Robbie.
And with this week, our special guest, we've got Simon from So I Married a Horror Fan podcast.
Our first ever guest.
Our first ever cool. guest or crossover for a podcast. So Simon's got a pretty awesome, we were just talking about his recent Scooby-Doo episode.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to tell us what's your take on your podcast, Simon?
This is an immense amount of pressure being
It is, yeah, we really are. Yeah, we're going in hard on you.
So the basic premise of our podcast is it's me and my wife Lee. She is not a horror fan in the slightest. But I've basically tried to strong armor her into watching horror movies. So it's kind of like we put a horror movie in front of her and then see how she reacts. And that's kind of the general basis of our podcast. So
yeah.
Has there been any that she's absolutely hated so far?
Yeah, there've been a couple, man. I'm trying to think of, because there was one recently, Last Night in Soho, she absolutely hated. She gutted that movie when we saw it. Halloween H2O, the original Halloween, Scream, she wasn't a huge fan of the original. And then there's been a few others. We watched, I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. Have you ever seen the movie Stage Fright with Meatloaf in it?
No, I've heard of it. It's like a she
went a bit hard on that as well.
I can understand. It's a slasher film with Meatloaf.
I listened to your Scream 5 episode. I do remember she sounded quite hateful of, I think, Sidney Prescott. I think she was very anti Sidney Prescott. I think we've all got that in common a little bit. We've all kind of strong-armed our partners. We haven't. It's a great idea for a podcast. We haven't. I don't think mine said she listened to our podcast a couple of times. Then she was like, I got bored. I was like, cheers. Yeah, she absolutely. And I think this is what happens in a relationship. You're just like, yeah, come on, share what we love, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But she's definitely there's only certain ones I've showed her though at times. Like she's watched a lot of horror films now, but there's only certain ones. There are some I just know, like she hasn't watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre because I just know she's just not going to like it. I just know it's not going to be hers at all.
I made Anna watch it last week because it's just such a classic film, and I in general I do kind of have a soft spot for the franchise. So I made Anna watch it, and there were moments where she jumped and she found it like extremely intense, particularly Franklin's death. She said, "Oh yeah, he's got to survive," and then a minute later he's sawed down. And that whole chase scene, she was kind of on the edge of her seat. And I asked her after, so what did you think? Did you enjoy it? She said, no, I didn't enjoy it, but I'm glad I watched it. So, I think she liked Scream. I think she hated Nightmare on Elm Street. She thought it was awful, which is strange. But
Charlotte quite liked Nightmare on Elm Street. She liked Nightmare on Elm Street. Scream, I think, I find Scream is just like, if you have someone who doesn't know horror, doesn't really like horror, I feel Scream is like a perfect entryway because it's kind of that perfect balance between, because it's Kevin Williamson, it's perfect balance between like a Dawson's Creek teen drama with a little bit of Agatha Christie whodunit kind of thrown in there in a way, with some extra blood and gore. But like it's a perfect, like, you've never seen a horror, kind of go for Scream, it'll work. You won't get the references, but you'll enjoy the ride, kind of thing.
And I think
there are a glut of those movies from that time period you could apply to that situation. Like I Know What We Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, Valentine, as we were talking about earlier. You can literally put that in front of any horror novice and they'll just get what they need from it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're not overly violent either, are they? They're not like the peak of like violence and gore. It's like if they hate kind of certain things, then you're not going to sit them in front of Saw and go, yeah, you're going to love this.
Yeah, you love this.
Yeah, because you kind of have to like the gore. You gotta have to like that part of it to be into it. Otherwise, because you're not really watching Saw for the story, are you? Really?
No, you're not. And I think this kind of brings us to this crossover episode. I keep thinking of Mr. Peanut Butter and saying, "What is this? A crossover episode?" But I remember you put out the when I think they dropped the first trailer for Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the one we're talking today, the new one. You put up that you wanted to talk about it on a podcast, but Lee didn't because she hates the franchise or whatever. So we reached out to you, like, yeah, let's have you on. So
what's your relationship with Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Because I feel like I remember hearing that you're not a fan of certain parts of it.
I have a really up and down relationship. So like everybody, I think it's one of those, the original is one of those holy grail movies you watch when you first get into horror. You're like, I'm a young kid, this movie can't be as scary as everyone says it is. And I think I've always been a bit of a gore hound. So I kind of watched it and was like, this is really boring. And then just never bothered to rewatch it. The remake is my favorite remake of all time. I think the remake is amazing. And I like all of the modern ones. So I've seen everything from the remake onwards and the original, but I've not seen 2, 3, or Next Generation. Okay. And I think it's one of those weird things. And to me, the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre feels like a found footage movie. It feels like something you shouldn't be watching because it was billed as like, this really happened, blah, blah, blah. They make it look like it's a real murder scene and all that sort of stuff. So for it to then spawn this really weird, glossy, high production value, like horror franchise and create a horror icon is one of the weirdest things I think has ever happened. But yeah, some of them I really like. Like I like the remake and the first prequel, the one that's the prequel to the remake.
Yeah, the beginning.
And I actually don't mind 3D. I think the 3D one's decent. Like it's got some fun stuff in it.
I like that one.
Like in a fun fair. Like what do you want?
Exactly. I've got a soft spot for that film. I watched it in the cinema and I thought like, what did I just watch? And then as I kind of watched it again, it clicked and I was like, well, actually, they're trying to make Leatherface more of like a sympathetic character and almost like an anti-hero. And it's weird because 3D is almost like 2/3 slasher film.
Did you actually watch it in, mind?
I watched it in mind-blowing 3D, in eye-popping 3D.
Eye-popping 3D. I was about to say mind-popping.
I guess it was. Yeah. And it's like, then the final third is like this weird revenge film. So I kind of, I've got a soft spot for it.
I know. I just don't really remember it. I've watched it like one night on Horror Channel, and it was kind of just like on it. I don't really remember. I remember Alexandra Daddario because she's memorable, but I don't remember. I don't really remember what happened in the film, apart from that she was in some way related to.
That's it. She's related to him.
Yeah, that I remember that part. I don't actually remember a lot of it, to be honest. I remember the remake clearly because the remake was like. That was probably more so like the original, yes, I watched, but the remake, I used to watch loads when I was younger. I loved the remake so much.
It was awesome.
It was so brutal. It was probably at that point like the most gory and graphic kind of horror film I'd seen. I always remember when he's getting dragged down the staircase and his nails breaking against the wall. It's just like, but it's grimy and dirty, like the original. The thing I love about the original is that it's like grimy and dirty, and it kind of makes you feel ill and it kind of makes you feel horrible. And I feel like the remake does that as well, but takes it to another level with the gore and the grime and it literally makes you just feel sick.
Yeah, and I think that the franchise in general, the continuity is all over the place and the tone's all over the place. But saying that, I haven't seen Next Generation, but the only film I don't like is the third one, because for me, the third one it's just extremely boring. And for me, that's like the worst thing a film can be, is boring. You know, it has no fresh ground to tread or anything like that. Whereas at least with the second one, it kind of does a little bit, it's a completely fresh story, and the other ones are kind of their own stuff. But the third one is just, it's just so boring.
I don't think I've seen the third one. I don't think I've seen it. I saw the second one only recently, and I thought that was weird as hell. But I literally don't. Yeah, so I can't remember the third. I can't remember if I have seen the third one. I've seen the Next Generation because that's weird. That's different kind of weird. Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. There's a mechanical metal leg, like a futuristic race. I don't know what the fuck was going on. Weirdly, I've seen that one. I think I've seen that one more times than several of the other sequels.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I don't know why. It's like it used to be on TV, and I just used to watch it.
But you could probably say that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the only slasher franchise, maybe you could say this, that has two Oscar winners in it, Matthew McConaughey and Renée Zellweger.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about them as Oscar winners in that film.
Yes.
It's interesting. Before, I think you were talking about like continuity. My mind's going blank there. I think we were talking earlier about Texas Chainsaw and how I feel like every other sequel that it's had since it was originally made, it's as if they've been struggling to work out what concept is it that we could do for a follow-up to this film. Like, apart from the remake, which obviously kind of followed the same, all the other ones, it's like they're struggling to be like, what do we do if it's not just that guy that's hiding in the basement and coming out and kind of capturing the kids? Like, what do they kind of do with this franchise?
Yeah.
And it's why with this new one that we kind of struggled with, how is it really going to, because they were selling it, obviously, like, although they haven't completely declared that the sequels don't count, they have kind of said this is a direct follow-up to the original. And it's kind of, we were kind of debating, like, how, before we watched it, how do you like do a continuation of that original film when there's so like many like open ends to it that you're like kind of meant to just be left open? So we didn't really know what this was going to be as a film.
I think that was the problem, though. When it was made in 1974, I don't think they ever envisioned it being a franchise. And you can kind of tell that the way that they shot it to look like the found footage. It's the same problem that the Blair Witch Project ran into, because they sold the first Blair Witch Project as found footage. When they made the sequels to that, they were like, well, we'll try and do a movie in a movie kind of situation with the second one. And then with the third one, they went back to basics. And I think it's the same with Texas Chainsaw, because Leatherface and obviously the family members are still alive at the end of the first movie. And there's obviously that there is interesting ground for them to cover, but for some reason, they seem intent on just remaking the original and just making it weirder like every time. It should not be a hard nut to crack, really. It should be the same as Friday the 13th. It's a man in the woods or in the outback somewhere. People stumble onto his land and they get murdered. Like, it's not rocket science, but for some reason they keep over egging the pudding, and I don't understand why.
Well, that's it. We were having this conversation as we were going to pick up some Chinese. That's what we had whilst watching the film. And I was kind of saying that how many times can you do that? Because obviously, you could have the same thing of, it's this family's house and they stumble in. And they had that with Friday the 13th. But each one got more and more ridiculous. And it wasn't a bad thing, but they had the final chapter, and then they had an imposter, then he was dead, and then he was then he fought basically Carrie, then he went to Manhattan, then he was a spirit jumping, body jumping demon, then he went to space. And it's kind of that thing of, they have the basic premise, but they have to keep one-upping themselves, because how many times can you do the same story without people being like,
But with Texas Chainsaw, as we mentioned, like, as it's like a holy grail film, they've always tried to kind of somehow, like, they've tried to add some kind of, each one, like some of them, even when they've been really like teen slasher more than anything, they still try to add some kind of little political commentary or give it an angle, because it's like they're not content with letting it not be like, every director who's had a stab has been like, no, we can try to recreate what the original had, instead of just being like, let's just make a fun slasher, which some of them have been, but they have always tried to like, oh, let's give this sort of political commentary or social commentary to give it a little bit more of an edge. Then people will think this is still like higher than, say, a Friday the 13th film, when they knew what they were and they just leaned right into it. Let's just get fucking crazy with this. I feel like maybe these films could have done with a bit more of that. Just fucking go for it. Just lean into it and just go crazy. This new one kind of does a little bit, I think. In some scenes, it does just go, let's just do the chainsaw. Because actually, in a lot of the sequels, weirdly, they don't actually, and including the original, he doesn't actually use the chainsaw that much. In this one, there's a fair amount of chainsaw death.
So, I was thinking, and that's kind of the one thing that I did kind of appreciate about the film, to be honest, is because when we saw that it was what, 83 minutes or something like that runtime, and it was it was a quick thing. I was kind of like, okay, how are they going to do this? Are we just jumping straight into it? Like, how are we going to start this film? And it basically, it started off with this strange kind of recap where where Lila, is in the
in the store. The document, they've turned it into a documentary.
Yeah,
so it's a little bit on the nose, kind of, that the original was a document, the kind of documentary style.
Yeah,
like you mentioned, Simon, and now they're kind of showing it like a modern day true crime documentary kind of style.
Yeah,
with John Larroquette, who did the original scroll kind of title in the original, back to do that little bit of a voice.
That was quite cool.
Yeah, it was an interesting ad, because when they said that he was coming back, I did wonder, are they going to do another kind of scroll title? I was just like, can you really do that again? Would that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah.
The weirdest crime in the annals of American history.
Yeah. It's like, how, I don't know. I just kind of, I wasn't sure going into it. And for me, like, there were a lot of the deaths were cool, I felt, in the film. I mean, just to pick some highlights, there was the first death that we got, with the guy getting his hand broken and then stabbed with it. That was awesome. And a lot of the gore in this film didn't pull away, which, I kind of really appreciated. Like the guy getting his knee broken and that kind of stuff. It was really it looked really good. But it kind of felt as if the surrounding story of it was really messy and just very weird,
Yeah. I think we'll come to that death in a second.
Yeah,
I think we'll jump to that in a sec.
Yeah,
kind of jumped ahead a bit.
I know. That's what I'm like. I get excited.
I was going to say we were going to put this as a spoiler-free episode, but now we're just into it. I think.
No, that's spoiler-free. 2 deaths.
I feel like you gave away a fair amount of a death scene there.
Yeah, but I didn't say who died.
No, that's true. You didn't.
True.
You gave away a part.
I will say that death that you mentioned, though, that first death, that's the first time I think in any horror movie I've ever seen someone attacked with their own bones.
Yeah.
Like, I might be wrong, but when I saw it happen, because I've been working from home today, so I've seen the movie twice.
No.
I watched it foolishly first thing this morning, and then I watched it just before we recorded to catch any other bits. And yeah, every time I see it, when it, like, this won't make sense to anyone on audio, but when it goes like that and then he just grabs the bit and sticks it in the guides, I was like, that is something else.
Yeah, it was an awesome death.
Yeah.
Like, if they're not going to give us anything else in these movies, just give us some creative deaths, you know what I mean? And it was well in from that point.
I think that's what these ones kind of live up to, because I said to you before that I feel like there's 2 ways to look at this film, kind of thing. There's one way where you could just go in and just enjoy it as a gory slasher film. Like, that's basically all you need. You don't need to have much more than that. As long as they've got creative kills, then it works perfectly as a gory slasher film. However, I think this film is also being judged on the other side because the directors come out and said that this is a direct continuation, and that he feels like they've lived up to the spirit of the original, and because the original so loved in a different way than any of the rest of the franchise, that I think a lot of people looking at this film will look at it and go, well, this isn't anything like the original or the style of the original.
No,
he's not really. I wouldn't even say that necessarily the Leatherface character necessarily even moves exactly the same way as I don't know. He just doesn't see, for someone who's meant to be a lot older.
Yeah,
I feel like the original was more stumbling and more like struggling to get around than this guy is.
But to be honest,
this guy jumps out of a freaking pool of water like he's freaking Jason Voorhees coming out of a lake. You know what I mean? He's like
There was one scene in particular where I could see Gunnar Hansen in the performance.
Yeah.
And you guys will probably know the exact scene I'm talking about. The very last scene of the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
When he's doing the whole the thing that he's iconic for. That was the only moment in my head where I was like, this is the same Leatherface.
There was one other bit where he's chasing somebody with a chainsaw. And I thought there, because he kind of has that, he kind of had a little hobbling limp, and I thought, the mannerisms are there.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, this feels to me more of as in terms of the gore level and kind of almost stylistically, it feels a bit more like it's a carry on from the remake as opposed to the original, you know?
Yeah.
Because the original wasn't gory.
I feel like if you said that this was a sequel to the remake, then I'd be like, yeah, this completely feels more like the remake. The style, the look of it. I feel, as we've already said, I feel like the original is such a hard one to ever try and make a proper sequel to, because not even Tobe Hooper made a proper sequel to it. He made a crazy off the walls, weird second film, because the original's so hard to do it. The original, like, how do you recreate it when it's meant to be like a found footage documentary? Yes, there's lots of horror films that have tried to redo it, and like you mentioned, Simon, with Blair Witch, and other ones have tried it as well, but it just doesn't really work. It just doesn't make sense, because documentaries are normally a one-off event. They're a one-off part in history, and the way that even the opening scroll in the original kind of tells you what it should be, it just doesn't work as that continuation. So you're right. I feel like if you love the remake and you love, say, the beginning or 3D or things like that, then this works perfectly in that continuity. But I don't think this film works in the original's continuity, except for one character they try to force into it.
Well, I mean that. So it's very, you know, I guess it goes back to the Scream thing of making requels, you know. And this is strange because 3D is very much a requel. It's a direct, you know, which is strange. It's a direct sequel. They'd already tried to do it, They'd already tried to do it, and you know, and that was obviously before we had. I think that might have been before we had Scream 4, and potentially it might have been before we had Simon's just exited the meeting for some reason. We will hopefully get him back with us. So
just keep going.
So it's kind of like they tried to do this requel before, and just in general, it kind of seems as if the whole film itself I've completely lost the point trying to just ramble while Simon's going about. So
okay, good. Right, bye.
I am so sorry. I'm using my other half laptop and it wanted to power down halfway.
Oh no,
it's all right.
No, that's fine, man.
I just I paused and continued it. There'll be a bit of a weird little. So anyone listening, that was a drop-off point where we just kind of lost Simon for a second. Rob tried to keep rambling on while we were like, maybe he'll come back in a second, maybe it'll work, but we decided no, it's not working.
because when I was trying to figure out, just like what's going on,
I have no clue what you were talking about. I wasn't listening anymore. I was just like focusing on working it out.
Well, Eunice took me briefly.
Yeah, Eunice, survivors of Storm Eunice.
Yeah, on a day like this, that was the first part in our head with this horrible storm that's going in the UK right now. We literally just thought it's either so it's got just internet dropped, or has he just lost everything? Power's gone and his house is blown away. That's it.
Yeah. Although I did remember what I said. So I was saying we were mentioning about a certain character who comes back, and how it felt a bit shoehorned and didn't really kind of make sense.
I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, because I feel like it's all over the trailers.
I don't think it's a spoiler.
My argument with this movie being billed as a legacy requel is how much of a legacy sequel can it be when both the original actors playing the main characters have died?
Yeah,
I had this exact same I kept thinking to myself, and when I'm watching her in the film, but I also have a problem with this in terms of the way she is in the original as well, because the original doesn't exactly build character in the film. You don't really get to know the characters at all. This isn't a Laurie Strode or Sidney Prescott situation. We didn't get to know her over several sequels.
No, she's the thing about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, is it's very prototype slasher, that other films build on. So whilst we have, I'm going to say it because I don't think it is a spoiler. Whilst we have Sally Hardesty in the original, we don't find out a whole lot about her. And then, like you said, it's not as if Laurie Strode, for instance, is a great example, because they, Halloween H2O kickstarted the whole requels. We had Jamie Lee Curtis, and we had Laurie Strode in 4 of the Halloween films. at least in her form and then obviously
and then
the
at
Rob
the same
Zombie
time,
remake,
it's also just Jamie Lee Curtis, so it doesn't really matter. Like, she could have not been in any of the other sequels, but because she's a well-known actress as well, I think it still would have. That also helps, because you could have told me that this was the original actress or it wasn't. I wouldn't have noticed. I wouldn't have noticed if this was the original Sally Hardesty or not. I wouldn't know the actress well enough. She hasn't got quite enough credit. She didn't have very many credits when I looked her up, throughout her years.
Some more stuff
so I don't think, this isn't like Neve Campbell or Jamie Lee Curtis, who you recognize in a film. They were both in several significant films. Have been and are continue to working to this day. But with the two characters as well, as I said, we got to know those other franchise characters over a whole range of films. So when they returned for their newest requels, which is still a weird phrase in my head.
It is.
When they returned for that, since Scream 5, that term has just gone. Like, it's good. Like, I didn't hear it at all, and now it's just away. But
it makes perfect sense in a way.
Yeah, it does. It does.
That's the annoying thing.
You're right. It makes sense. It makes sense. I know some people who absolutely hate it. But I had heard it before Scream 5, but now it's like cemented that is what you say.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point I was making was that when they returned for Halloween 2018 and when she came back for Scream 5, it felt like characters that were returning, especially Scream 5 returning to Woodsboro, as in return to the original, closer to the original story anyway.
Yeah.
It felt like a full circle kind of moment, whereas this isn't that, because we don't know anything about Sally Hardesty.
No, and
we know nothing about a character. We don't know the actress. It just seems, and I feel like the film kind of treats it a little bit like that, because if they treated Laurie Strode or Sidney Prescott the way that the character gets treated in this film, then there would be uproar.
Yeah, there would. It's kind of like, I mean, yeah, the build kind of in press release stuff, and I didn't watch any of the trailers, but in promotional stills, the role of Sally Hardesty is billed as being a lot bigger as well. She is kind of billed as being a central character, and it seems as if it's got to be a lot more about her kind of confronting her demons and doing that kind of stuff. Whereas
it is because they were trying to do that. This film was purely created on the basis of how successful Halloween 2018 was. This is 100% a prototype of that. I don't know what you think, Simon.
I think, in all honesty, like I'm on two schools of thought with this, because I rewatched the original Texas Chainsaw about a week ago, and her performance is central to that original film.
Yeah.
Exactly what you guys said, though. It's not like they revisited the character over any of these sequels or anything like that. And the problem I have with this one is, okay, so this new movie is on Netflix. Anybody with a Netflix subscription can watch it. So even if you're not familiar with the franchise, you can watch it inside of a bubble. The problem I have is when you introduce a legacy character like this, and then she's in, I think, 3 scenes in this movie.
Yeah.
If you'd maybe introduced her earlier in the film and kind of given the film an extra 20 minutes, just so we can kind of see what she's doing in her day-to-day life, kind of build that trauma into the character and give her more of a developed arc. So even if you are new to the franchise and this is the first Texas Chainsaw movie you've seen, you have some kind of context for how emotionally broken or vulnerable or angry, whatever it is that she's feeling. So when she faces off with Leatherface at the end, it gives you that kind of like, I get it, I understand why there's so much rage and anger. But as it is, it's like, oh, she's here 1 minute, she answers the phone, she's on her way, and then that's it. And it's like, it's so underdeveloped. And for a movie that's like, you hit the nail on the head. Could you imagine? It's kind of like what they did with Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween Resurrection.
Yeah.
They're like, you're going to be back, and then we're going to bump you off, and that's going to be it. But I could not imagine them pulling this shit on Jamie Lee Curtis now or Neve Campbell. They wouldn't even pull this shit on Jessica Biel if they made a requel to the remake.
They wouldn't.
No, they definitely wouldn't. I feel like, because we've batted around like Netflix and the idea of legacy and how the fact that like it's kind of Halloween 2018's kind of inspired this. So I kind of thought I kind of got a little short summary of basically what the back history of this film was. It's not a very long history because it's quite a simple one. It's not like a in-depth one, but originally before this film came out, Lionsgate, who owned it before, they'd planned for this to be like, they'd planned this big 5-film kind of arc, which was based off of Leatherface, the one that came on. And I haven't seen Leatherface, but I've heard very bad things. I haven't heard anyone who really liked it. Or always like that.
From EastEnders, I think.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, I remember the thing about that kid from EastEnders because there was this big rumor go around because when he left EastEnders, I remember his Sam something is his name, and when he left EastEnders, it was the same time they were casting Spider-Man, and there was this huge rumor going around that he was the one cast as Spider-Man because his agent had sent out a tweet saying he's been cast in a really big film. So everyone started going, has this unknown, like fairly unknown British actor got Spider-Man? Things like that. And then there was this big uproar, and then you noticed how quickly it disappeared the second they said, "Oh, he's been cast as Leatherface in Leatherface," and then nobody cared anymore. It was like, "Oh, okay, we don't give two."
I was trying to think which EastEnders characters would be good Spider-Man villains. So I had Ian Beale as Dr. Octopus. I was trying to think of something.
Is this where your mind went?
Yeah, I was like.
Danny Dyer as Norman Osborn.
Yes.
Yeah. Fuck it.
Yeah.
Oh no, that would be good.
Phil Mitchell as Rhino.
I can totally see that. That is good.
That'd be cool. His leather jacket's like his hide, you know? It's like, yeah.
That's good.
I'll let you get back to it.
Yeah. Following that, so they wanted to build like a franchise off of that original, as if they were going to start building the story of Leatherface from like well before and start building him through the years, kind of thing, and follow him that way. They took so long to release Leatherface because of production problems that they actually ended up losing the rights to it because they'd gone over the time that they had to release it by, which is why that film didn't even get a proper kind of release. Like no one even knew. I think it appeared on Netflix, but it hadn't got a proper. It had like a digital release. It didn't even get a proper theatrical release.
No theatrical release. It was before the days things went straight to Netflix as well. It just dropped on it.
Yeah, it was just weird. It was just, oh, there it is. So it was picked. So when the rights disappeared, it was picked up by Legendary, who made this film. And Legendary quickly kind of were like, well, right, we're not going to take the chance that we're going to lose out on anything. We're going to get straight onto this. They got Fede Alvarez. Is it Eddie?
Fide?
This is a running theme in our show. We don't know how to say people's names.
No.
I think it's pronounced Fede, but I think
it was Fede because it's Federico. It says it's Federico Alvarez, which is a lot easier to say, to be honest.
Yeah.
He came up with a story to revitalize the franchise, take it to the roots, inspired by Blumhouse's Halloween. He had this idea, and Andy and Ryan Tohill were hired as the directors and filmed a week of production before they were fired. Yeah. Studio bosses at Legendary saw the footage and deemed it unwatchable, and fired the duo. And then David Blue Garcia came on, and he had to refilm all of it. Yeah, because there's certain things in America where Producers Guild and Directors Guild, where you either have to give them a credit, even if they did they could have done like 2 hours of filming, and you have to give them a credit as a director if they did that, or you have to basically refilm everything you've done, they had to with I think Solo, the Star Wars one with Ron Howard, where if he wanted to be sole credit, I think the only reason they got around that was because the director said fuck off and we don't want to be on it anyway. So because that was a.
I have to ask though, how bad do your dailies have to be that your movie for a 9th Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie is deemed unwatchable?
I know.
That's what I mean. Well, I think because they literally, the bosses at Legendary literally hoped, unless, maybe the directors, they said they wanted to go close to the original. Maybe the original directors really tried to go that kind of really gritty, older look, and they just went, what the fuck have you shown me? This doesn't look good. This just looks like an old documentary. And they're like, yeah that's the point.
And there's no blood.
Yeah. And then they went, well, fuck. But yeah, it must have been awful because they obviously looked at it and went, it's been made very clear that that Halloween film was such a big influence for how they were making this, that the producers must have looked at it and went, this doesn't look like Halloween 2018. This looks like a different horror film.
Yeah.
So they must have went,
Leatherface dies tonight.
Yeah, Leatherface dies tonight.
More of that dialogue.
Texan accent.
And then obviously he refilmed the footage, and then not much was heard from the film after that outside of Alvarez. And this is when Alvarez started really weirdly kind of positive. He kept spreading positive messages all over Twitter, like, this film's really good. It's really inspired by the originals. And people were questioning why that was. And then there was a report that came out. It was because the test screenings for this film were awful, like really negative.
I heard something about that, but I couldn't find.
So he was trying to get ahead of the storm of like why it was so negative. So obviously the original, I don't almost say probably the original directors might have given them exactly what they wanted, and then they realized with the second, it's just we haven't got what you wanted originally, or we haven't got the story you wanted. This is why it's not matching up to your expectations. Maybe, I don't know.
I can tell you with certainty that there was a scene cut out of the finished film that was in the test screenings. So there was a scene where when Sally and Leatherface are fighting off, she shoots him and he puts the chainsaw blade up and deflects a bullet off of it. Like he like swipes it away. And they cut that out of the final movie. I mean, that
kind of makes sense.
That definitely makes sense.
Because there was a couple of bits that they cut out due to the test screenings, I think, because they knew that negative sort of storm was coming.
That's what I mean. So they definitely weren't. This definitely wasn't sounding like the love letter to the original that people were expecting it to be. And I mean, I'd certainly say it was. It isn't really. Like, I wouldn't say it is a love letter to the original.
No, I wouldn't.
I don't feel the same love that I felt with, say, Halloween 2018 or the kind of Hamar's nature that was in that, and the way it kind of skewed it. I don't know how you feel about Halloween 28. We enjoy it. I don't know if you like it.
I personally like both the Blumhouse, David Gordon Green Halloween movies. I think they're both really, really good movies, completely for different reasons. But yeah, I mean, there is something, like we were saying earlier, there's something where you spend enough time with both of the characters, the antagonist and the protagonist. Whereas in this is such a pro Leatherface movie that, like, it doesn't really matter if you brought back Sally Hardesty, you brought back the guys from the 2013 one, the 2003 remake, and them all team up as the Avengers.
That's it. Franklin rolls back in.
Yeah, Franklin comes back. Because that's it.
It's like a portal scene in Endgame.
Yeah. All of them. All the continuity comes together. Dennis Hopper back from the dead.
Yeah, Dennis Hopper back. But that's it. Like, I think you touched on it, where it's one of the problems with the film. I think visually a lot of the deaths are really cool. The bus scene, whilst it does have that, some cringe dialogue, the actual deaths are really well done. When he's just slaughtering his way through them, it was awesome. But then it's almost like the characters outside of of Leatherface just aren't really fleshed out, and I
started to feel like they wanted these characters to be unlikable.
Maybe
I literally started to feel like they wanted them to be, they wanted to take all the things, like, at the moment they kind of hate about, like, certain people in the world and put them into some of these characters.
Because you've got, like, you've got you have these commentary on things, but then it doesn't know what it wants to be. You've got, like, you've got stuff on it. So it meant, you kind of get stuff about influencer culture, which influencers are stupidly annoying. And then there was this kind of, I don't know how they meant for it to go, because we both read the same review. And it mentions about how a certain character's gone through a school shooting and is a survivor of it, and has this kind of phobia of guns, and then has to learn to get over the phobia to face Leatherface. And it's kind of like, is the review said, is this like a pro NRA message? Are guns good now?
I didn't really understand why that subplot was in there, because they didn't really seem to do a lot with that subplot. It was like the flashbacks were kind of a little bit like, I think they were beating people over the head with it. Especially, there's one scene in particular where she has the flashback, which we'll talk about more when we get to the spoilery bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just it was a weird choice for them to be like, the thing that she's afraid of is a thing that's going to save her life, and it just so happens to be a gun.
Yeah.
In Texas, where everybody's pro-gun.
Yeah.
It was just such a weird, like what is going on? And it doesn't even, like, again, it's another flip as well, because you expect, they do kind of like a switch between the two, what I guess are two final girls, the two sisters. Because you expect the main sister to be like the one who has the balls to face Leatherface and all that stuff. But then when they kind of give the other sister this weird subplot, you're just like, okay, have you done it to make a character more interesting, or like to kind of I don't know what it is as well about siblings in this franchise. Everyone's got like a sibling who has some kind of like ailment that means that they're like, I don't want to sound horrible when I say this, but they're almost written as an inconvenience to the main character. And I don't know why that's like a staple of this franchise.
It is, isn't it?
Since Franklin in the original, it just seems to be whenever they just try, it's because they're trying to follow that same blueprint, aren't they? They're trying to be like it. It's like now as if that Franklin character, a version of the Franklin character, has to also be, as well as we have to use a chainsaw and we have to maybe use a hook. I don't know if we didn't use one in this one, but but those kind of things. But yeah, there you go. I broke my formula already. But still, like characters come to somewhere that's out in the middle of nowhere, so that no one will know what's necessarily happened, or all those kind of little points. I feel like we need to. So just go back round to a set to stop. I feel like when I was finishing off my film before, just to say that the reason that they believe that it's on Netflix, by the way, is because they feel that it was those test screenings that made Legendary go, this isn't going to be a Halloween style theoretical success. Really? We need to just hand this off to someone. We need to sell this off because this isn't going to be the success we think it is. Which I think, based on the middling reviews that we've seen, is pretty true. But the main reason it's up there is because I think we've got as far as we can go without basically telling people what's happened. We're kind of beating around the spoilers at this point. So I guess, like, as a non-spoiler, I guess if Simon, what's your kind of non-spoilery reaction to this film?
I had a good time with it. I enjoyed it. I mean, I think it helps that I'm not a huge Texas Chainsaw fan. So I was just like, show me some cool kills. I'll put it on in the background. I can work to it. And that was kind of it. And I got what I needed from it. So yeah, I was pretty happy with it overall.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I am quite a big fan of the franchise, and I thought it was good. I enjoyed it. I'm going to watch it again this weekend, and I imagine I will watch it because, like you said, there's good kills in there. But for me, the thing that it's missing the most is the lack of the family, and and I know this is going to sound weird, but the lack of cannibalism in this film. Every other film that's driven, and for me, it's a short runtime, and they have these two subtexts, subplots they're trying to push: the school shooting and Sally Hardesty. Neither of those particularly hit for me, and they spend time with them, but not enough time, when they could have maybe spent a bit more time on having surviving family member and some cannibalism, just to flesh it out a little.
Yeah, you want that cannibalism.
I want that cannibalism.
I think I kind of agree. Although I did have fun with it. To me, I had fun with it, but I can't say, outside of the mask and the chainsaw and things like that, I can't say, if I rewatch this, I couldn't 100% say to you that I feel like this is definitely a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie.
Yeah.
I feel like there is parts of this. I feel like that psychological, grimy, horrible kind of disgusting nature that I really liked about the other films is not really here. And I said a second ago about the lack of the hook and things like that.
Yeah.
And for me, weirdly, the hook was always one of those things that's one of the most impactful parts of it. And like you said, with the cannibalism as well, and that family aspect, I feel like when you get rid of all of that, this is just another madman who's out for revenge.
Yeah.
Like this is just this could be any other Michael, Jason, this could be any other one. And I wouldn't necessarily notice apart from a few parts of the story.
Yeah.
See, that was one of my, before we kind of really get into it, because I know we want to talk about it, I think that was one of my main issues with the portrayal of Leatherface in this movie. So Leatherface has always been portrayed as being, I think the most frightening thing about him, and I said this when we talked about him on a previous podcast, was, to me, it's the fact that he's a mentally challenged child in the body of a giant.
Yeah.
So he doesn't necessarily know what he's doing is wrong. He just attacks out of instinct. And I think in this movie, the fact that they kind of, I don't want to say they gave him more intelligence, but the fact that they gave him the foresight to kind of move away, befriend a person, live with her for 50 years, kind of turn his back on the life that he had, the stage of Arrested Development that he's in the original movie, I can't imagine that character having that foresight to go and want to live a quiet, normal life, because he doesn't know any different to the life that he has.
Yeah.
So for me, that portrayal of him and taking away the family and the cannibalism and trying to kind of make him what I guess they would class as a normal member of society was really the thing that hit home, that made me not think that this was a Texas Chainsaw movie.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. It's weirdly that I feel like, in a way, some of that Leatherface, like even in the original, there's some moments where you kind of see a bit of a weird humanity, but also that he's kind of just a follower as a character. He's not really his own man. And although they might be trying to tell us that, yes, he's gone through such a long time that now he's kind of matured. The one that's in that original film, if we're saying that this is going to be a continuation of the original film, the Leatherface in that original film, I'm sorry, but that character's not maturing in this way.
No, he's
not changed like that over the years at all. He's not becoming what we see in this film. Like,
no, he's very much, he's more.
There's little aspects of it, aren't there? That in this film, there are little aspects where they try to show that vulnerability of Leatherface and link back to that to kind of have it, but there is just something in the portrayal and the way that they kind of show him kind of all of these actions that he does himself, even some of the kills he does, it just didn't feel like something that the original Leatherface would have done. If we're going to go out of our way to say that this is a continuation of the original. If we said remake, then maybe, but not of the continuation of the original. Right, I think spoilers.
Yeah.
So we'll do the countdown. Yeah. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Leatherface hangs dong.
Yeah, he does.
We did expect that.
That big dong.
That big dong.
Nick is also wearing a skin mask.
Yeah, it's also good. I mean, technically,
he wears others' foreskins.
Yeah, he wears others' foreskins.
Today's is Franklin foreskin.
Yeah. He keeps it fresh, I mean, I'm trying to think, it is. I kind of come away from the film with these strange feelings. I mean, I think one big point of contention for me was Sally Hardesty. I always liked this idea that after the first one, I think in the second one it mentions that she's institutionalized, and then in another one where it has the opening call, it mentions she dies in an institute. I always really liked that ending for the character. Because it felt almost real. Somebody who went through that horrific trauma to not become so badass, to just be absolutely fucked, was kind of a really interesting spin on it. And she didn't need to be a recurring protagonist. And now they've got her in this, and she's like, I said to you, like, she's got that kind of Sarah Connor Terminator 2, muscle and vest look. And it's just... it felt so out of place, and then it's almost so underused, because we see her, chopping up a pig, and then we see her
again. That bit, I don't know why that bit that threw me off as well, because I can never imagine why would someone who went through that in the original film now turned to someone who just likes to slaughter open pigs and stuff after what she saw. Why are you suddenly? Why is that so? Is that a hobby of yours? To cure your own meat suddenly? Like why?
That is the perfect reason to go vegetarian. Surviving the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Also, I know we kind of touched upon the remake. She's dressed like Erin.
Yeah, she is.
The white tank top, cowboy hat, and the jeans.
Yeah. Why not
just make the character her instead? Like,
it don't have to hark on with this again, but it's bloody. She's fucking Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween.
Yeah,
She was wearing that same tank top. She's got a shooting yard in her garden. Like you could see little shooting like bits at the back of the. They just are. They've forced another character into a completely different archetype just because they wanted to be this badass woman coming back. Which the problem is, she's not really badass at all. If anything, she almost could be seen as a villain in this film, not as a savior. She's
well, she does. She has that, and then she has the second scene in the weird cornfield or.
It's sunflowers. It's a dried sunflowers, which look awesome, by the way. The cinematography is actually very.
Yeah,
I really like the cinematography, but
I fear no evil. I fear no evil.
Yeah, and then it's just like that, And then
this is me with my, I'm a lot into character. So although as I said, the original doesn't really have a lot of character, I feel like that makes sense with the style they went for. That you don't have time to understand people. It's all about the unknown in the original film. Whereas in this one, it always bugs me a little concept. And all in my head, I'm just thinking, I don't understand how she actually found that sunflowers field.
No,
I don't know how she got anywhere, to be honest. That guy contacted her, I assume, the guy but a lot of how she got anywhere, I don't really know how
Texas
she came to a conclusion.
Huge, man.
Yeah, it's fucking huge, but apparently we're just going to say that this is a tiny area, then okay, fine, but still just a continuity in my head.
It's like the Ghostbusters Afterlife situation. They phone Ray and they're like, so Egon's out in this middle of bumfuck nowhere where you guys have never been. Magically appear in a field at the end.
Yeah, we're just here. Hi.
And
you didn't see us coming. You didn't see us drive up. You didn't see us anywhere near, but we're here. Hi.
Yeah.
I think the main bugbear with telling this story of having a legacy Leatherface is that they could have done exactly the same story without bringing Sally back.
Yeah.
You just kind of tell it from a different perspective. You just say he came to Harlow one day in 1974 and he acted out, killed a few families. The woman from the orphanage took him in, and now one of the ancestors of the family believes that he destroyed his family's legacy or something, can have them return to be the protagonist. You don't need to have Sally Hardesty, especially with what they did to her. I mean, did you guys see her dying so quickly in this?
Yeah.
I literally holy fucking shit when he put the chainsaw on. I did not see that coming at all.
I did. I said to you,
I mean,
she's going to die straight away.
You said she was going to die straight away. I mean, I guess she did die straight away, but it was pretty quick. To be fair, I started to get the feeling a little bit because just the way that they were treating her so far in the film, it was literally just quiet, silent shots of her reacting to things around her. Like the scene where she looks at the picture in the car and we get that and we hear the voices. And I think I even saw someone in a review say that literally it's but that rings completely hollow. If this was the original actress, then maybe there'd be a little bit of sentimentality to that. But instead, this is a completely different actress looking at a picture of a film she wasn't in.
And
she's reacting to it like she said, just
people she's never met.
Yeah, and it's also, a little bit you're looking at it going, okay, but I don't fucking know who you are, really. Why should I give a shit that you're looking at you're looking sad in your car for a little bit?
The one thing I did
emotionless
was when she found Leatherface and he was just sat in that room, and she was like, "Say my name. You don't remember me, do you?" I kind of like that, in the weirdest way, because it was.
I found it quite straight. There was something weird about it.
I guess she wanted some kind of. It's like validation, or she wanted some kind of
I kind of got that reason.
And I liked it, but it and then literally
Yeah, well, I literally, I think I joked to you in that moment saying, all she needs to say is, do you remember my brother? Do you remember my brother in the wheelchair? Oh, I remember you now.
Yeah.
He was a good cop, you know what I mean? But instead she was just like, as if you're going to remember like this one person that got away. It's like, bitch, I've killed millions.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking.
And I've already seen somebody meme that scene. So you know the scene in Endgame where Scarlet Witch says Thanos. Somebody's put her face on Scarlet Witch and his face on Thanos, and he's like, I don't even know who you are.
Yeah, and that's the perfect. Like, I kind of loved it because it's kind of like she has this life of vengeance, and then it's
I could see what they were trying to get at there. They were trying to give this kind of almost like sadness to her character, the fact that she just really truly, they're trying to really force it into our faces that yes, she really can't let go of this at all. She can't let go of the past. And then that story does lead on to Leela's story, the girl in the shooting. That's the kind of message she passes on to her after she died, like after she comes back, when she should have. Well, I'll get to that in a second, but like she passes that message on, that don't let the past kind of haunt you. And again, if that was a slowly played out part, or like you said, 20 minutes longer to get to know Sally Hardesty a bit longer, then maybe that would have worked. And if that was a legacy character like Laurie or someone, that might have felt a bit more like a passing of the torch moment. But instead, it just doesn't. All it feels like is you're telling a girl who's been in a mass shooting to grab a gun and try to kill someone she's not going to be able to kill.
Yeah.
I think also as well, it's really hard for a character like Sally Hardesty to have an emotional scene with a character like Leatherface. I mean, in Halloween, they kind of get away with it because at some points they're brother and sister, at other points they're not. But there's always some kind of emotionality to Michael Myers. Like he always, whatever timeline it's in, he seems to recognize her, and there seems to be like a light behind his eyes whenever he sees Laurie.
Yeah.
Whereas with Leatherface, he's such an emotionless killing machine that what was she expecting him to say? Oh yeah, I remember you. I remember you. Like, first off, he doesn't talk. And secondly, he has no recollection of the hundreds, I imagine, of people that he killed, because to her, he looks at her the way that people in abattoirs look at cows. You are just another piece of meat on the chopping block. And that's it.
That's exactly what he is. He's almost as close as you could get to the butcher, but also if the butcher was the animal himself, basically, because he literally is. Like in the original, he is. That's actually another thing I was kind of like, in the original, he's like a snorting. He sounds like a hog half the time. He literally is like snorting like a pig and making squealing noises, and he's literally making those noises because it's almost as if the character doesn't know whether he's a dog that needs to follow his leader, or if he's actually his own man, kind of thing. That's that like disconnect that you get. And again, we could be led to believe that over years of that woman looking after him, that she's rehabilitated him to believing what he is or helping him. But because we get none of that kind of part, I would have rather seen more of the connection between him and this woman, or something this woman did throughout the years, instead of, just points. Because we've mentioned like about the time and the lack of it here. I mean, this film literally, like, what do we say? Like, without credit, it was like an hour and 18 minutes. I think we worked out.
It's really not.
That's a really short film.
Because it was.
Yeah, I'd love to know how much they cut out of it. How much longer the original cut was to get it down to this lean. And even with the credits that lead to the post-credit scene. I mean, the post-credit scene is what, 10 seconds?
Yeah, if that. Yeah.
If that, and then you have to still sit through 5 minutes worth of credits. But yeah, like, it's so just, I'm not one of those people that needs a lot of character in my slasher movies. Like, okay, occasionally you're going to need to have like a final girl or boy fleshed out, but everyone else is just kind of like meat puppets. Yeah, we could have done with a little bit more, like, as you say, like the fact at the beginning when the woman has the heart attack and then she goes into the ambulance and he's adamant that he's going with her. Why is he going with her? Like, that out of context doesn't make any sense, because you've never seen anything of them. Even if you do it in a Halloween H2O style and you have a rolling credits of like explaining what he's been up to through newspapers, or local woman adopts blah blah blah, just to kind of fill those gaps in, at least you have something. And this just seems to be a kind of stitched together patchwork. Hey, there's a subplot here, a subplot there, murder scene.
They had the documentary at the beginning. that literally they could have just said, they could have done like speculation part of it where they believe that this happened and this happened, just to have a little bit more kind of there. And no, I don't think none of the Texas Chainsaws are actually very long. The original is only about an hour and
87 minutes. Yeah.
87, hour and 27 minutes long. So it's not that I'm expecting it in that way. It's just, I think it's more the expectation. If you're saying you're making like a legacy kind of film, then we want to know a bit about the characters and what kind of developed.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, then that's why like Scream and Halloween 2018 were both like 2-hour-long films, because they had a lot that they needed to tell the audience.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would have felt extremely like we found nothing out. Even then, like in that one, you had like characters who weren't in it, that their legacy characters in say Scream, they weren't in it very much, but we got enough of them because we knew them to be like, yeah, that'll do kind of thing. But here, where's that?
And that's it. It just seemed as if like, I don't know. I mean, the whole motivation for Leatherface's rampage kind of made, for me, thinking of it as kind of going on from the original film, it seemed as if the two characters are just completely different. He just randomly went to this orphanage, which is implied that he was a child because there's pictures of the kids and his face is
in the background, but he looks like a man. He looks fully grown in the
picture thought he was
in the
a
background, but his face is scratched out, but I couldn't tell. It's
Do
meant to
we
be
think
after the original, isn't it? So he's not.
That's why they don't talk about cannibalism anymore, because he ate the kids.
Maybe. They said they're all gone and there's no one left in the town.
But then wouldn't he still have that hunger?
Maybe.
He didn't even try and have a bite.
There you go. That's why there's no cannibalism. He filled himself up on all of the children.
Or little boys.
On all the children that she brought in, including her lovely racist comment.
Yeah. Yeah.
He likes all the meats.
But I don't know. It was just like, it made no sense. The thing I did like is it got straight into it. It did just open up, and it was kind of like there wasn't a whole stretched out thing. But just the fact that this, he's been living with this old woman who somehow keeps all of this locked in, and then she dies.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, well, I'm going to have her face now. It reminded me of that meme, when you see Jeremy Clarkson, where he's like, oh no. Well, anyway, or something like that. I can't remember what it is. You know the one.
No. I probably do, but I can't think of it.
Yeah, but it's just like, he's like, oh no, this woman's died. Oh, well, I better rip her face off and wear it and start killing people.
Yeah, I didn't quite get why it specifically was her face that he needed to take off either. I feel like that's not established.
Oedipus thing, wasn't it? It was like a weird, my mother.
Yeah. I feel there was a bit of I guess there's a bit of a psycho thing going on there.
Later on as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Breast or something. Yeah.
There was a little bit like that's what I was thinking in my head. I was just more like in the original, I don't feel like that was established. It seemed like he'd pretty much make them out of everyone. He liked a selection of faces, a selection of clothing. He just likes a bit of everything. He just likes it's like cross-dressing to him. But yeah, I guess there's that. He wants to feel close to his mama.
His mum. Yeah. But I don't know.
One question I did have for you guys, because I found it quite distracting at times. What did you think of Leatherface's look in this movie? Because I thought he looked really fucking slimy for most of the movie.
Yeah, he looks a sweaty boy, didn't he?
He looked really slippery.
I mean, I guess he's wearing a freshly, unlike his other ones where they're normally dried out. He's normally there was kind of the idea he'd dry them out and cure them, and like he would a pig skin or something. So they were kind of almost like snake skin, kind of because you could almost see through the lampshade in the original. There's a face lampshade, and you could see through it. It's that strong but cured kind of thing. But I feel like that was the difference between that one, whereas this is a freshly cut face on there. So I get that they've explained it, but I kind of had a problem from the second I saw the poster about the look, because I just don't think it's as effective.
No,
it just didn't look. He just looked a bit odd to me. He just didn't look. I would have preferred he pulled out I know I get it, skin and stuff like that, but House of Wax showed us that you can keep things protected in a certain way. So why couldn't he, when he pulled out that chainsaw, why couldn't he have pulled out an original style looking mask?
Yeah,
you know, again,
what threw me was the fact that you saw him for the first time without a mask on.
Yeah,
and you get kind of a good shot of his face in that thing, and I was like, so where is that? And then I was thinking, where is he going to get the mask from? Is it going to be from one of the people that he kills? And again, I was kind of shocked that it was her face, because you don't really think it. You don't really think it's a woman's face that he's wearing in the promotional material. But like, yeah, it just. Have you guys ever seen the movie Tusk?
Yeah.
I thought he looked a bit like the Walrus Man.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
he had a similar look.
Because we were even questioning how he kept it
stayed
on his face.
Because even in the
couldn't quite work out how that, like, because he didn't take a whole, because you could see the back of his scalp when you saw later on Sally Hardesty goes into the sunflowers and she sees, which I did like that bit, which was the woman with her face gone, which was kind of a link to the first shot in the original Texas Chainsaw, when you see the kind of weird, like the way he's displayed the bodies in a kind of Hannibal-esque kind of way. But yeah, that kind of cool kind of shot, like, but then how is the front of the face? I thought I saw him stretch the skin to the top of his head a bit, but I was still confused as to how.
No, because in the other, even in the remake, you know, when he kills the boyfriend and then takes his face, he makes, you know, he threads string through it and stuff like that
to the back to make it fit and stuff.
And he's a sewing machine, isn't he?
He's a sewing machine, yeah.
He's like literally like he's a sewing machine.
He's a daft hand.
Whereas I don't know what he used in the middle of that field to make it stick into the back of his head. But
but I wasn't overly keen on his look. I mean, it's weird, but there was kind of a point where I got into the film, and I think it was when he actually got the chainsaw out. You know, when he got it from behind the wall. I think that is the point where I was like, actually, I'm kind of into the film now. And it shifted from being during the day, and it started to get raining.
The pace like that, from once we get to Dante's death, the pace properly picks up. Like, that's when we get the main, because it's not a long film. That means that then we're basically on just a home stretch of constant Leatherface just hunting and killing, basically. All of these different characters. I feel like actually Dante, we haven't actually said Dante is the part of the partner with Melody. They're the two main characters, the gentrifuckers, which that did make me laugh.
But the best thing was I don't know why, but I watch everything with subtitles on. I just do. I find like I pick up more, and it's just a habit I got into. Every character had a name, apart from Dante's girlfriend, who was just called on the subtitles Dante's partner. And it got me thinking, did we hear her name in it? Because she died. No. She was the first to die, wasn't she?
I don't know if
the fake Samara Weaving looking woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't have a name in the film, but on the IMDb credits, she's credited as Ruth. Because I thought the same thing. I was like, does she have a name? But then she's not really in the film long enough.
She's not long enough to learn it.
No, because I remember him like introducing her as his fiance in the scene. But again, I don't know if she said that they ever say her name. It was a cutscene, obviously.
Yeah, maybe it
when
was.
She was in
it got cut because. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because we get to know again, like as I mentioned to you, and I think this might have been when we had connections problem, but I mentioned that about how I feel like they almost wanted some of these characters to just be unlikable. Like they literally looked at things in the world right now and went, right, what's the worst personality trait some people could have right now in the world? And just went, right, these are our characters. Because again, they do kind of make them, like, especially Dante and Melody, they give them a storyline that is kind of, again, they kind of make them the bad guys. Melody gets a chance, I guess, to kind of come back around a little bit.
Yeah.
But Dante's definitely portrayed as like a bad guy almost because of what he does. Not intentionally, but he definitely doesn't come off well in this film.
No. I think it's his it's his lack of remorse, I think, over anything. It's like, you don't belong here. We need you out. Like, we didn't kill her. We didn't do this. Like, it's his lack of accountability, whereas at least Melody kind of has some sort of guilt or remorse for the things that they go through, whereas he just is a big man swinging his dick around thinking that he's like the king, and then he just like Leatherface just fucks him up. But I find the interaction that he has. So there's an interaction that he has with, I think it's Richter, the guy who runs the auto shop, when he's like, when he takes the keys for the bus, and he takes the keys for the Tesla, and you kind of think that he's going to do something, and then he doesn't, and he just backs down, and you're just like what is your character's purpose? Like, and then when you see Leatherface go after him, you're like, oh no, he's brown bread, like he's
gone, man.
That brings actually Richter. Richter's a character I actually really liked. I thought that because they kind of at first they acted as if he was going to be like possibly like he could have been a contender if there were going to be any family members. Yeah, I was at first question, is he going to be a family member? But then obviously at first they kind of bill him as like, here's another dumb redneck with a gun. But then he actually gets some chances to actually develop it a little bit. Weirdly, the scene with him and Lila and the gun, at first you think this is going to be a stupid scene, but he actually shows a bit more to him. And that scene when he takes the keys again, I feel like, I was there like, if I can take the key, they're fucking like, I get that was weirdly a good reason for them not to have a reason to drive out, but I actually agreed with it because I was like, if they can't prove, I get why he's doing it. Like, I was completely on board with him. I was sad when Richter was one to get offed, but it also annoyed me the first time. This is what, at first, Melody, again, I couldn't quite get a note on her for a good while because at first, her and Dante both, very early in the film, get two scenes where they're so judgmental straight away. So she judges him straight away as the dumb redneck, but the stuff she says to him is just like you're just trying to pick a fight for no reason. So at first you think that Melody's going to be that kind of character. She's going to be maybe the sarky bitch, or she's going to be the, full of herself. But then when the old woman happens, she's very quick to be remorseful. But Dante with the policeman in the car, which, I get that one. That one has got a bit more reasoning behind it. I understand that part. But even when the cop's nice, he still continues to act like the cop actually turns out to be fine. And they're quite like, oh yeah, like they weren't any reason behind it, but he still kind of has that kind of, he was a prick, wasn't he? Like, I don't know.
I think I'd warmed to Melanie's character by the end of the film. Warmed to her. I kind of thought she was a decent enough final girl. I don't think she was she didn't stand out loads, but I think she had some decent scenes in it.
I know when I saw the first picture, she was on the first picture they released of the film, and I originally thought that she was going to be one of the first ones offed because I looked at her hair and was like, your hair looks perfect for Leatherface's original mask. Like, he could make a mask out of your face and your hair, because he has that kind of puffy kind of curls in the original. So I was just like, your face, I think you're going to be his mask.
You're going to be the mask.
I was wrong, but still, so back to Dante's. We'll go with Dante's death. We'll go in our order of our deaths. So Dante's with
that was cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was. I think it was kind of the way in which it had been shot was kind of cool, with the door swinging open and you see the kind of scuffle. But there did seem to be a lot of things where, like, you should have died. Him and Sally's death. Like, he got his throat slit and he was bleeding out, and then he gets up and he walks on a bit more. Or it looked like he got his throat slit, but
was it? I thought it was his face.
Yeah, it was his face, but it looked at first
open like that.
At first,
but I couldn't tell if it was a double hitter or not. I was trying to work out.
There's no way, with the amount of blood that pisses out of him when he gets hit, that he should have been able to like have that extended scene. But I think the reason why he has the extended scene is because that's when Richter does his face turn, and he's like, "I must avenge this poor boy that I've never met before."
This poor boy I was beefing with.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he doesn't get very far, does he? He dies not too long after he gets outside.
So
I mean, like, even
like,
I think
his hand, and he's like, "Oh, don't go,
don't go." And it's like, you're my brother.
I get, it looks better for Richter's character than it does for Dante's. By that point, you're just like, just move on.
Just die.
Just go and get everyone out of here. Leave, Richter, leave. I only like you. Leave. Everyone else stay.
Richter's death was good, man. I really liked that one. I thought it was quite cool how Leatherface went behind the door, and I was expecting like, are we going to get, chainsaw in the back or just hammer to the head maybe? And then we had a little bit of a subversion to that when she moved the mirror and we just saw him, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then when his leg got fucking
that bit was that definitely gave you a bit of a
nasty.
wince.
Yeah, that was nasty.
Him fight. Yeah, he put up a good fight, to be fair. I think again that is another one where I don't feel like the whole thing with Leatherface in the original though is the element of surprise. Because I don't feel like the Leatherface of the original, outside of maybe the girl, but I don't feel like if the original Leatherface had gone up against someone like Richter, I don't think the original Leatherface would have got out of it, to be honest. He's not really, you don't get any one-to-one kind of fights, but in this one, again, though, he looks a bit more muscular physique, whereas Gunnar Hansen looks a bit more the round physique.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's a bit more of a homely,
husky boy.
A husky boy.
A rotund
A rotund man. A chubby funster.
Yes. Which I like about them. But yeah, we get Richter, they fight, and then he gets pushed, his neck gets pushed against the glass and he's bleeding out. But then it gets properly brutal.
Yeah,
that last bit is at first I thought he was going to give Melody away because he was kind of reaching out,
yeah.
But then I expected to see the first hit. I was like, yes, like that was, it was a cool shot, but I didn't expect to keep seeing it again and again.
No, he basically splits his head open like an Easter egg. Like his head is like there is a hollow spot in where he's like bashed his brains in, and I'm like, did this guy fuck your adopted mum? He is like beating the shit out of him for no reason.
Yeah,
that's surely the most brutal death in the film, I think, outside of the bus scene.
And surely Richter and Leatherface must have known each other.
Yeah.
So it is kind of like.
Can I ask this again? This is actually just popped into my head again. This is another lack of continuity with the original, by the way, because in the original he doesn't waste anyone's face. He doesn't waste anyone's body. He keeps them, he refrigerates them, he puts them on hooks because he wants all that shit. But in this one, like, what's wrong with Richter's face?
Well, where's the cannibalism, man? You could have made head cheese.
I know. You know? I mean, he could have at least had a little nibble.
Yeah, he didn't even have a little nibble
on the brains that were there or something.
Yeah, and I think that is for me like one of the things where it unfortunately fell into a bit more standard slasher territory. You know, in the remake and the beginning, you have Sheriff Hoyt, who's an incredible bad guy by Arlie Emery.
Yeah, he's awesome,
and he's played extremely well. But you have these, family characters, and you have all of this kind of
they bring a hateability. It builds the world as well around you because you know a lot of characters and you start to hate a lot of characters around you.
But Leatherface was always the butcher. He was always the muscle. He wasn't the brains behind the operation.
Yeah.
He was very much getting meat. Whereas with this, it's like it feels like he's going on a rampage, but like we said, the original character wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it's the mother dead part that's meant to be the whole. He's just out for revenge, so he's on a proper bloodlust this kind of time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that's the best story to tell when again you're meant to be like a legacy continuation. Then I'm not sure that's the best for us to be like mourning the death of someone who we never knew previously.
Yeah.
And it's a bit a bit redundant, I think. All I keep thinking of, I keep just thinking, I know we get, obviously, the bus scene, I think is that, like, this is both the scene that I've seen people loving and hating. Hating the characters and the dialogue in this scene, loving the deaths in this scene. I don't know if you've got any favorite parts of deaths that you see. There are so many just quick shots of deaths. I don't know any of you or your favorite picked up deaths in that scene.
I don't know. There was just a lot that happened. What about you, Simon?
So the party bus massacre scene to me feels like this is the scene that most modern slasher movies are based around. So I equate this scene in this film. I don't know how big of wrestling fans you guys are, but like when you build a wrestling match, so you build a ladder match, you build to a big spot that everybody remembers.
Yeah.
You remember the rest of the movie, you remember the big spot.
Yeah.
And this is the film's big spot. To me, it like I have issues with it, but not the issues that I think everybody else has. I think the characters in 2021 or 2022 act exactly how they would act in that situation. And I think the dialogue is perfectly acceptable, because if you're on a neon lit party bus with a fucking cell phone out, like, you are going to act like a prick. Like that.
Yeah, let's be honest.
Yeah.
My issue again is with Leatherface himself, because Leatherface in 1974, and because so many of these movies are set in the past, he's one of those characters that when you put in a modern setting, it always feels odd. Like he never feels like he should be walking around in 2021, at all. So to me, that was kind of the odd thing of like seeing him in this scenario with these influencers on this bus, and then acting exactly how he would. With that said, this scene is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, there is one shot in this movie, because I purposely didn't have any breakfast this morning because I knew I was going to watch this movie, and I was like, I don't know how bad it's going to get, but I'll eat afterwards. And there's a scene where the woman's trying to escape out the window, and he like chops her in half, and the entrails fall out of the window.
Yeah.
And to me, that was just spot on.
That was beautiful. I would say either that death on the minibus, or when the guy had turned around and he just chainsawed through him. You know, there was so many cool deaths.
That's the one that fell down next to Lila as she's like trying to escape on the floor, and he's like dead-eyed looking at her, kind of thing, like while he's like shaking a little bit. I liked the one when he took the one guy in the back and then sent her into the again. I completely don't feel at all that this is, to me though, this totally doesn't feel like Leatherface to me. I gotta be honest. This doesn't feel. Leatherface is introvert. He's hiding away. He's not approaching an entire crowd just to kill an entire crowd. Michael would walk onto the bus. Jason would walk, definitely. Jason would have slaughtered them long ago. But I just, as you said about Leatherface not quite matching this kind of modern day, like it felt both weird that he was in there, and I loved it. I loved the chainsaw, but again, like even like the chainsaw, like he didn't actually use the chainsaw that much, like in the original film. No, but like he did a lot more of different things, but here it's just like slaughter the whole room up.
I quite like that though. I think because I think that's the problem is because it's like it's the to go back to the wrestling analogy, it's kind of it's a big thing, and once you kind of use it, you either have to continue to use it or you're not going to be able to top it, really.
I mean, the film builds to this chainsaw. There's a whole scene of, I've collected my chainsaw out of the wall. We even hear him go off to fix it for a minute. Like you hear him with the nuts and butter, you hear the wrench kind of going, and like that he's obviously fixing it up.
But I like that he didn't just use it to kill people. I like when he was just chucking it at people as well. That was really cool to me. And there was there were some really weird moments for it, like when Melanie is sneaking out of the house and she jumps down, and then Leatherface is there, and I don't know if he threw a sledgehammer at her and she went into the floorboards. I was like, what the fuck?
That was weird.
He used his like throw attack.
What you mentioned earlier about him deflecting a bullet with his chainsaw, that scene's like right there with deflecting a bullet. Like it seems out completely differently, throwing a hammer into someone so hard that they fly down the stairs into the floorboards.
Yeah,
that's cartoonish.
Yeah.
He also throws the chainsaw as well when they're in the car. Like he lobs it at the window.
Yeah,
and he
I love that.
Off, like pimps off into nowhere. It's like, what are you doing?
I love that though. It was so weird.
This is what I mean. This is why this is like a next level. This is why we keep saying about the remake, because it's like if you took the remake and then went crazier than the remake. Yeah. Because in the remake, he slices people in half and you see them get like up, he hooks them to he slices the guy in half in the middle of the room. So I can completely believe that Leatherface goes onto a bus and slices a bunch of people in half in any which way. I just don't believe that the original did anything like this. I just don't believe this is the original's film at all.
And I think sorry to cut in, man. But...
No, I was gonna move on. So you talk before I was.
No, I think you raised a good point, Simon, because it's this idea of Leatherface in the in modern day, and that whole bus scene and stuff like that with the influencers and then filming it on Instagram Live or whatever. And whilst I was watching that, I was thinking the way in which because Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the fear comes from fear of the unknown, the batshit crazy, and the isolation. The fact that, you know, this is happening and you're kind of powerless to it. I thought if they want to do further sequels or further films in this, they shouldn't set them modern day. They should set them in the 70s and 80s when people didn't have mobiles and it wasn't so easy to be like, you know, calling for help. Like Scream is an example of a film that is modern and is contemporary, you know, and each film features technology of the time. Whereas something about Texas Chainsaw Massacre makes me think if they'd have set this film in 1980, you know, 6 years after, and similar to how they did Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, where the family had just been on the run and had just settled down somewhere, and were going under different identities, it could have worked, you know.
Yeah. Or even just hiding out like this.
Just hiding out.
Like in another town. No, I completely think that would have made a lot more. This is the problem with them trying to take the template of a completely different horror movie and trying to transplant it onto Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's a character with Michael Myers. It made sense with Laurie Strode being older.
Sorry, there is one idea that I would take from Halloween 2018, and I would apply it to Leatherface. If you took Leatherface as he is at the end of the first movie and have him taken into custody by the state, change the location completely, put him into some kind of care facility and have people trying to interview him, find out things about him. And you could have that as kind of like a, you know, those Netflix documentaries of making a murderer, what makes the man. You take Leatherface and you put him in that scenario, and then you have him surrounded by other patients. He's killing people in a facility. I think that's kind of, I've always felt like Leatherface needed a change of location, but I just never really knew what location change he needed.
Yeah.
And I don't think transplanting him into a modern day, but set in a town that still looks like the original, it's very jarring because you've got a desolate Texas town that resembles the original movie, but then you've got people, as you say, on Instagram Live, streaming on a party bus, things like that. I mean, there's no fucking way they're getting cell phone reception out there for a start. Like, you're not fucking 5G live streaming in Harlow, bro. Like, honestly, like, what's going on? But one thing I will say, though, when you rewatch the movie, if you rewatch it over the weekend or whenever you rewatch it, when they zoom in on the guy's phone screen, all of the people that are commenting are like the director, the production company, all of the usernames are like people related to the film, which I think is quite cool.
Yeah.
It's a nice little Easter egg.
There was the one was with you probably noticed this one as well, but I feel like a lot of people would have missed it. I was looking down at the time, but I feel like people would have missed Leatherface in the chair.
Yeah.
The first time you see him isn't on the stairs. It's when he's sat on a chair when Dante walks into the room. He's just sat there quietly.
And then
I know a lot of people would have. I feel like a lot of people would have missed that shot. But it was such a cool because he just blends in. He's just sat there like so quietly when you first see him that he blends in while Dante's at the back of the room. I just like the way that his clothing and everything. You could easily just miss that there's a man just sat there in the chair because you're focused on Dante at the back of the room.
My thing is, like, despite, because we are, you know, we're saying a lot of kind of criticisms of the film, despite that, I still found myself kind of having fun with this film. Like, I would still say it's a fun film. I think the short runtime kind of works in its favor because for me, it didn't feel like it outstayed its welcome. You know, sometimes you watch a film and you think this should be like 20 minutes.
Oh yeah,
shorter.
We could have got those extra 20 minutes and absolutely just found that we continue to just dislike Sally, or we continue to dislike some of these characters.
Yeah,
which would have been even worse. Could be like, oh, it's not even pacey anymore. It feels like if they did do a lot of cutting on this film, that it feels like they've definitely cut it down to just make it pacier with the kills, to just kind of speed it up to the death. And as a film like that, then if you want a slasher film that's like gory and like that, then this is perfect kind of thing. That's why I think there's the split here between, if you just want a good gory slasher film to watch this weekend or watch a new film like that, this is perfect. This is the line we've kind of got, where I think our negative criticism is more come when we're thinking of it as that continuation, the legacy. Then this film, I really don't think, I think barely works as that film that they've sold it as. But if we just sold this as another sequel in the Texas Chainsaw, then it's better than some of the other sequels.
Yeah.
That's what I can say about that.
I'll be very interested when the year ends to see where it falls in terms of the other big horror franchises that are being released this year. Yeah. So we've got Scream, Halloween Ends. We've got a new Predator movie, new Hellraiser movie, and a new Evil Dead movie all coming out at some point this year.
Yeah, we have.
So I'd be very interested to see how it stacks up against the rest of them, because it's come out so early in the year. We've still got so far to go. I think by the summertime, this will be a movie that a lot of people have forgotten, but it's because horror at the moment is in such a good place. It's not a sign of quality, but I think it doesn't do enough to stand out in the ways that, say, Halloween did or Scream did. Or I think the fact that they're completely reinventing Hellraiser and The Evil Dead, I think I'm expecting something wildly different from both of those movies.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it sadly will kind of just get lost in the shuffle for what is essentially just a fun slasher movie. Like, you could put this movie on a Saturday afternoon and just kill 80 minutes. You could put it on like while getting ready to go out for a night out and just have it on in the background.
Absolutely.
And perfectly fine.
Yeah. But no, you're right. There is no originality to this film. There's nothing I can say that's not original, that's not been stolen from trying to recreate a better film or recreate another film. Like, it's a fun film, and people will be disappointed if they were coming into this expecting, like, I gotta be honest, a little part of me was hoping, really, I knew it went away as soon as I started to see the trailers and stuff. I kind of, that's really not what we're going to see. I kind of wanted to see more of a psychological, kind of a slower psychological, kind of that gritty, grimy of the original, because they said it was a continuation. So when they first announced it, that's what I expected to see. I expected to see a psychological kind of thriller more than a slasher gore kind of film. So I definitely haven't gotten what I hoped out of this film, because I was hoping more of a back to its roots instead of just more of the same.
So the question I have for you guys, because I don't know how you guys feel about Fede Alvarez in general. I don't know if you've seen his Evil Dead or Don't Breathe.
Yeah.
But do you guys think the movie would have benefited from him directing it as well as writing it? Do you think it would have been a better movie had the studio given him more money and put him fully behind it?
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely think, because I think what he did with Evil Dead, I think he recreated that in a perfect way. You could not do that film the same. If they'd went into it with the humorous style of the original Evil Dead, that film would have fallen flat. There's no way to recreate it. It was like lightning in a bottle for the first. Obviously, they've created it again with the second one technically, but it was the same cast, same thing, and they were kind of up in the value. But if they'd tried to do it that way, it would have failed. The fact they went with a more gritty kind of black comedy style with the Evil Dead kind of, I just thought was perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still one of the, I showed that, that's one of the films I did show to Charlotte. She was literally like sickened by it.
But it's awesome. And I remember when we watched Don't Breathe.
Oh, we did with cinema. Charlotte in the cinema, yeah.
With Charlotte. And it was, it had a lot. It had atmosphere and it had tense moments. There was, I haven't watched it.
That's more of what I would have preferred to see. And Don't Breathe would have worked as a better template for a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film.
Yeah.
Than say what I think they've used as their template for a Texas this time.
Well, yeah,
that kind of character who's been lost for a long time is kind of in a house. They don't really get what it is. They're trying to. That would have almost worked better in a slightly different way, obviously. But that again would have worked better than, I think, what's the way they've approached it this time.
No, I'm with you. So I think if Fede had been more involved in it, I think we would have had a stronger film. I think. I don't know what else the guy who I can't remember his name, Ryan. I want to say Ryan Garcia, but that's a boxer. It's not.
You mean David Blue Garcia?
David Blue Garcia. That's it. Yeah, I don't know what else he's done,
I think it only done so. Even the original directors, they're both directors who haven't done like a lot. They've done like very smaller indie kind of specific stuff. I'm surprised when they fired the first director, they didn't try to hand Fede more money to go, can you just do this? You know the story, you've written the story, can you know, because there was obviously a bit more meat to the bones that they've decided to cut away. But I am surprised because I think what we've seen as him as a director so far is great stuff. I mean, how implemented. I remember us leaving Don't Breathe. How sickened were you by the bass?
I was like, fuck.
I think I heard. It's one of the few times I think I've heard a whole cinema kind of gag.
At one point, I was literally like, okay, is this guy? Because I think they did like a little face turn in that where like, okay, maybe the guy's a good guy. Then I'm like, oh, actually, what the fuck? And I was literally like grossed out and thinking, fucking hell, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And I think if they'd have gone, they could have literally done a similar approach where, because that idea is they break into his house, and you could have had it something similar where, you know, people are somehow it's similar to the first one where they just wander into his property.
Well, that's what the original was. It was a trespassing film, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like basically, the only reason he goes after them is because they trespass on his property. He's not hunting for people. You're on my property.
And if they had a similar layout,
Twisted Home Alone.
But instead, when they go into the basement, instead of finding, you know, what they find in Don't Breathe, they found, you know, Leatherface's cannibalistic layer, his skins, you know, the body's hung up. I think it would have worked better.
Yeah. I think this is where we're at though. Where it woulda, coulda.
Woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
I don't think, you know, I don't think what we got is bad. You know, for me, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films become kind of the rainy day films, you know. I can stick them on and I can have comfort in them, and I know I'm going to get.
But I do feel the Texas Chainsaw Massacre as a franchise, compared to say the Halloween or even Jason in its heyday or things like that, is much more forgotten about. As in, I don't know many people who've actually seen this franchise outside of maybe seeing the original or the remake. I don't know people who've ever seen them, and they haven't been the hits that some of the other ones were. Pure, and I do think this was their hope to reinvent the franchise, and it's kind of sad that they haven't. I do think this is very similar to the remake or Beginning or 3D. This is a very similar kind of film. They haven't done anything different except maybe, you know, they've made less slutty looking characters, less teens that want to have sex.
They
instead of want to have sex, they want to gentrify a neighborhood. But apart from that, you know, that's pretty much the main change. And they've still given them that little social commentary leader's character, but all of these things, they don't make it. They seem to think that by adding her being a gunshot victim and by adding this gentrification kind of plot line and sometimes adding modern technology ideas, that it seems to make it more interesting, but it really doesn't. It doesn't add anything to the film. Like something to do with the character could have had more. As we've said about Seed, changing the location, all those kind of things, they could have made it more differently. And I think it's a good time to go back to Sally Hardesty, as we've already said, the lack of interest in her. And I just want to mention about her death, because her whole lead up to the death, she locks Melody and Leela in her car in a kind of, I want to lure him to my trap.
Because she says,
which again, even that idea feels underdeveloped.
Yeah.
That kind of feels like she doesn't wait for him to go anywhere near or find them. It's kind of a strange one, because she ends up just walking up to him anyway. So why are you trying to lure him to a trap if you're going to walk into the house?
My trap that I come to you for.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Maybe she would have done better if she'd waited to buy the car and then shot him from a distance. But no, I'm going to walk into the house, into a room while he's sat sniffing his mum's clothing.
and then Sally's death was cool. Because, you know, we have the scene where Leatherface runs out, and I like that they had a little bit of a clash. I think it's a wise choice they got rid of him deflecting the bullet. That's very wise. But then when he kind of, you know, gutted her and held her up, that was really cool. And chucked her into the trash. That was awesome. But then she stayed alive for about 10 minutes after having all her internal organs shredded.
there. That was the thing I did point out. I was like, how the fuck is she? Why is she handling the gun? How the fuck is she still alive?
Also, am I right in saying that there is another death that is exactly the same as that, either in 3D or the remake? Somebody else gets
in the beginning
and held up.
In the beginning,
yeah,
it's an awesome
it looked
death.
very familiar.
It's an awesome death.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, it's a bit of a. But again, if you are someone who, for some reason, has grown a love of this character and things like that, it's a proper slap in the face, I think.
Yeah,
if you were someone who likes this character.
I mean, I love Leatherface.
We said earlier about the whole, if they did this to Sydney or Laurie, but it was in spoiler-free territory. But seriously, like if this had happened to Laurie in 2018, people would have been like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, that is so not dignified, and it's brutal. I mean, I guess in my head, brutal. I guess, like, say, Dewey in the new Scream, he gets a pretty brutal kind of, like, more brutal than I expected to happen for him, his character. I expected him to die, but not quite as brutally as it got the blood in the. But that, at least it was dealt with some kind of, like, love of the character before we got to that point.
Yeah, and the thing is, we've spent 25 years with David Arquette as Dewey, loving that character, seeing that character.
Yeah,
and the thing is, like, it's not just the fact that we've not had Sally Hardesty in other films. It's the fact that it's also not Marilyn Burns. We don't have, as an audience, an emotional connection to that actress.
Yeah.
So her death, to me, I personally, and I'm probably going to get crucified for saying this, I found Melody's death at the end of the film, when she had her head cut off, to be more upsetting than Sally's death.
Yeah,
because it was so unexpected and so brutal. And I've spent this whole movie watching this character's arc and her vowing to protect her sister, and then her sister's left all alone watching her sister be murdered.
And I kind of, I mean, I didn't expect it, and like I said, I didn't like. That was a shot. That was one of the. I think that was one of the few bits in this film that actually I didn't expect. Yeah,
I think the rest of it you could all see fairly clearly coming. I think this one I didn't see coming, and it was also very effective. I liked the throwback to the original, even if it's in the weird autopilot car driving her away.
That was weird, because I was like,
I was still sat there like, I just didn't realize that they actually could fully do it in that exact way. I thought you still had to have some kind of control. But
there was a moment where I thought something might happen, but they left it a little bit too long, so I let my guard down. And that's when they decided to put the sunroof down. I was thinking...
you thought he was going to come through the sunroof?
I thought he was going to come through the sunroof, or he would then saw her head. And I was like, whatever you do, don't do that.
Yeah.
And then it went a few seconds, and I was like,
I was going to say, I preferred the swinging. I was really hoping he wasn't, like, swinging to build up strength to throw that at her. That would not have been a good ending.
Shot puts,
3D kind of the saw in your face kind of thing. No, that was really what I wasn't hoping was going to happen, and it didn't happen, which is good, because I thought that was an effective part of the ending. But yeah, it's definitely much more effective than Sally, who, to be honest, I didn't honestly. Well, there wasn't enough for me to feel anything for her. Really. I even might have disliked her a little bit. I disliked that she shut Melody in the car, actually, and I dislike. There's a bit when she comes out of that building and she's like cackling and laughing, and it just seems so. It felt weird. I didn't quite like the performance at that point, because it felt like odd, like she's kind of cackling and laughing, trying to get his attention, and then she starts shooting, and then it's seconds before then she's dead, basically, and it's like, okay, there you go. That was that was whatever your screen time was, probably only about couple of minutes anyway, but they could have been used better for other people.
Am I right in saying as well that Leatherface is the only slasher character that has survived every film he's been in?
I think. Does he
he's
die in any
not supernatural?
I mean,
because he always seems to live in these movies, no matter what they do to him. I find it remarkable that someone who's just a man has survived all these movies.
I think he dies in Leatherface 2. I'm sure, because they not Leatherface 2, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Because
he's left on the cliff, isn't he? Or is he pushed down the cliff? I don't know.
That's I'm sure Chop Top is the one who's on the roof. I'm sure he blows up when fighting Dennis Hopper.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I don't remember him dying. I thought he was left on top of the mountain, that he's the only one kind of there. He's left swinging.
That's what I remember. So I remember watching the second one, and the place they're in blows up. And then in the third one, it's now a completely different family, and Leatherface is there. And I'm like, I thought you blew up. I was kind of like, what's going on here? I'm going to check.
I mean, that wouldn't be out of the realm of like, we've talked a lot about like how, oh, you're bleeding out so much, why aren't you dead? But let's not act like that's not a common thing in horror films, that someone bleeds out or gets stabbed, or just to actually, that was one major thing I had with actually recent with Scream 5, was the fact that she gets, so many characters got like stabbed in the gut or stabbed in the thing, and it was just like, okay, so you're fine now, are you? You're okay? You're just walking around.
That scene with Chad, don't even get me started.
Oh yeah.
Oh god, yeah. See, that was an artery. That was an artery in your leg.
Yeah, that would have killed Ed. That was literally like femoral artery. Like you could bleed out in like seconds.
But even the main character, she gets a knife into her, and then it gets twisted. I'm sorry, but and Sydney gets stabbed. In Scream 4, Sydney gets stabbed around about the same place, and then she's done for the rest of the film. She's out. She's not getting back up in Scream 4, but in Scream 5, apparently now she's indestructible to that kind of knife. I've been stabbed there.
Yeah.
I've been stabbed there. There's nothing to affect me.
She's been stabbing herself to build up a resistance to it.
But anyway, my point was, yes, like we're used to this in horror films, that sometimes they push the boundaries with what's possible. But I'd also say at the same time, Sally's just was too far. She got in the gut. You saw the chainsaw come out the back, and he lifted her up, and the chainsaw went up inside her. I'm sorry, like her guts and her heart were gone. Yeah. They were obliterated in that scene. But they needed the passing of the torch, kind of take the gun to the child who's been shot in a school massacre. Take the gun.
Did I say to you at one point, like, she's just got to take, like, when Sally goes and sees Leatherface, and she's like, well, say my name, remember me. And then he walks out. I was like, she's just going to turn the gun on herself and be like, oh, well, this is good for nothing.
Oh, yeah, and weirdly, if Sally had killed herself at that moment, I think that would have played more into the arc of the original than it would have that she just couldn't get over it. So that's it. He doesn't even know me. I've spent my whole life. It's been wasted. Bang, I'm dead. Yeah. I actually see that as a more perfect full circle than what happens to her here. We've talked about the end. We've talked about that. So I feel like we've pretty much We've pretty much done. Are there any other, Simon, anything else that you were like really like hankering to talk about?
The only thing I wanted to mention was, do you think the tag at the end is way too fucking optimistic? Would you watch a sequel to this? Do you think there will be a sequel to this? Like, obviously it shows you him going back home to where he was.
Home,
yeah. Like, so do you think there's going to be a sequel? Are you interested in a sequel?
I mean, I'm
surprised the house is still there, that someone hasn't just bulldozed that already. Like, I know it's a completely deserted area, but I was still surprised it was there. Considering it had been a mass murder site, I felt like someone would have got rid of it. But I guess they had built it looked like they built a tourist kind of thing around it, because they had all of the gifts in the shop and stuff. But I don't think... I find it hard to believe, because I'm fairly certain that Legendary have only passed it to Netflix because they expected it to be a complete failure. And these reviews don't give me much hope that it's going to be much more than that. No. But then horror films, I guess, are cheap. If Legendary owns the rights, maybe even if it's enough of a hit on Netflix, they might just say, we'll make a cheap.
Red Notice is getting a sequel. Red Notice is getting a sequel.
Yeah, that's got Dwayne. That's Dwayne. I haven't actually watched it, to be fair. I was one of the few. I looked at it like I wanted to, but I might. But it's one of those Netflix. It's one when they release a film and it gets a lot of hype because it's like, oh, it's got a big star in it.
Yeah.
But then about a week or two later, they forget about it and it just gets lost in Netflix's big universe.
But that's all.
And it's hard to ever find those films again. They never pop up again half the time. Like a lot of their own stuff just. Like, I forget. I remember so many films on Netflix where I was like, oh, I can't wait till that's out. I'm going to watch it. I'll watch it next week. Oh, and then, it's just gone. I forgot.
Yeah, but that's so many. But I think going back to your question, like, would I watch a sequel? Yeah. I mean, I like the franchise. I love it. So I would watch a sequel. I wouldn't expect great things from it. But I don't think it's going to get one.
Because I feel like they'll just pass it off to just another director who's just like, yeah, okay, let's just make a by the number. Let's just do it then. You've given me like 10 million to make a cheap kind of let's just do the same again then.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's been, because Leatherface was a big, as far as I'm aware, was reviewed kind of worse.
But I don't think anyone, if it hadn't been put on something like Netflix, I don't think anyone would have even seen Leatherface. Like, I don't think anyone would even knew it existed, because a lot of people didn't even know there was such thing as a 2017 Leatherface.
I would have been the only person who watched it.
But I think that's where the franchise had gotten to, though. It is basically was like lost. It was like majority, unless you were horror fans, and sadly, there's not as many of us supporting these kind of films. So unless you're a big horror fan, then there's not enough of us to make a film a success. It has to reach further than that. And I think Texas Chainsaw had got to the point where it was like that. It was that lowly kind of looked upon that it's like no one was going to see it unless. And I think that's why they've tried to pull a legacy thing. But sadly, they might put a nail in the coffin.
Potentially.
I do think Seb accidentally pitched a great sequel, though. Just a minute ago, because the thing is, he's going to the house, and you mentioned it being a tourist attraction, so that's the hook. If you're going to do a sequel,
you're right.
Have it set up as a tourist attraction, so have it like as a famous landmark that they've not renovated, where you can come and see where these grisly murders happened. He gets into the house and he's living in the basement. People don't know that he's there. The tourists come in. You've got the Don't Breathe style, they're encroaching on his house situation again. You've also got it set up as a tourist thing. There's an idea there.
No, well, there's even the bit you said earlier about the whole serial killer documentary. They've already showed us there's a documentary that they can imply that was a big hit. So now they're getting more and more people, or maybe just someone who's just really interested in it, a small group that love it. And there you are.
I mean, you could go.
There you go. If they're listening out there, I feel like that's probably a better film than what we've already got an idea for next. Like that, you've got an easy there. That sounds like an easy horror film to make.
Well, I mean, you just, because you go with something like it doesn't have to be an official tourist place. You could just say, like you get, because me and Anna are going to Paris next month. We're looking at going to the Paris catacombs. So you have like the general admission area, and then you have like the things where you have to get local guides and illegal tours of it and stuff like that. So you could even have it like that, like this is somebody can get you into the house where it happened legally. People don't know you're there, and so it's not like it's a big tour company doing it, but they break in, they go into the house thinking they're going to see this, place where this crime happened and see stuff. And they don't know that he's just moved back in. And I think it starts killing.
I feel like Simon's pitched several ideas that could have worked very well. So I feel like the producers need to find you. You could just pitch that in just an hour or so. You've probably come up with more pictures than that. They sound like they're stumped for ideas, to be honest.
Just as many ideas.
You need to tweet Netflix and say, I've got a couple of ideas that you might want.
Yeah.
Netflix will green light anything, right?
Yeah.
You can have all of my pictures. You don't have to pay me. I just want to be a victim in the movie. I just want Leatherface to wear my face.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. I would go.
That would be amazing.
Well, I mean, I guess. Yeah. Well, I guess that's kind of got to conclude the episode.
That's it for our first crossover. It was a little bit messy at times.
True.
A few technical problems along the way.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy, and I'm glad to have had you on, Simon.
Yeah. I mean, let's, before we end the show, do one more sell of your podcast, Simon, before we end.
Before I get to me, I just want to go back to a wrestling time. I want to put you guys over for a second.
Okay.
I've been listening to you guys for about a year now, since you dropped your Midsummer episode, and it was really cool for you guys to invite me on, and I really appreciate you bringing me on. And I love listening to you guys, and it'll become evident why when people listen to this episode. It feels like when I listen to your podcast, it's just like having a chat with my mates down the pub about a movie. Like, we've all gone to see a movie at the cinema, we're all having a chat over pints. And I'm not one of these people that likes listening to big film school breakdowns of movies. I just like hearing dudes talk about movies in the way that I would.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we do our podcast as well. There's no scripts, there's no nothing. It's literally, we put the mic on, we talk about how we feel about it as we would if we were just sat at home. And that's one of the main reasons why I love listening to you guys. And the thing is as well, like, we're part of a very small community on Twitter. Yeah. And I love the fact that we all support each other. You're always hyping people up. You're always like sharing people's stuff. It's not just, you know, you're sharing your own stuff. You know, you're bringing other people into the community, shedding lights on other podcasts as well. So, you know, it's really cool to kind of count you guys as like horror friends in that community. And it was really cool to be invited on this. And I want to put it on record now, so I can't back out. When The Evil Dead Rises drops, I think it's coming to HBO Max. When it comes to Sky Cinema or however it gets released over here, you guys are coming on ours and we're going to discuss Evil Dead.
We'll do
it's going to happen. Like,
absolutely, yes.
Yeah, but we'll do it.
So, yeah, I was going to say, I was about to say we need to cross over onto yours, but thank you for that. It's really, I mean, it's amazing, like how many, I feel like just as ours started and the Horror Project podcast and yours started, and like to look, we're all kind of around the same dates that we all kind of, and this whole kind of community of podcasts. And I feel like we've got a lot more that I kind of noticed now that have all kind of like grown around, like that we've all grown kind of together, and we can see how we're doing. And I think we also learn from each other things that work and things that don't work. And as you said, ours is completely, I think we started a little bit trying to have a kind of structure, and it quickly went out the window. And anyone who's listened to this podcast, especially if you normally listen to Simon's and stuff, you'll find that, yes, we are normally this kind of all over the place. Some people will absolutely hate it and some people will like it. I don't know, but we're definitely not. I'm not really into like a lot of podcasts. I get bored of ones where they've got the same kind of a set structure that they have to follow. I just get a bit bored of them. I kind of like the fact that on ours and yours and some of the other podcasts we listen to, they're just kind of, anything could suddenly happen. Like suddenly you're going off on a tangent for 20 minutes. Yeah, you're talking about something completely different, but I don't mind that because it's relatable stories that you're talking about. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's it. And when we set out, you know, the idea of having a podcast, I think the appeal to us did literally start where we used to go to the pub together all the time and we would just talk about films. And once we were talking about Ghost Ship. Maybe we were talking about Ghost Ship, or we were talking about something, and like a barmaid just said to us, "Are you still talking about that film?" And we'd be talking about it for like half an hour, 40 minutes. So we were like,
"You were like, we should make a podcast." And at that point, I'd never really listened to podcasts, so I was like, "Okay, I'll give it a try." And now I listen to them every day on the way back from work and all the time. So I'm a proper fan now, but it's been great, and I do love it, and I'm started to get more and more excited all the time about our new, like, what can come next. And I think the other exciting thing that we want to try to get everyone, hopefully at some point we can all get to some kind of convention or
that'd be awesome.
Or just set up a big meetup or so somewhere just for everyone. So that includes anyone who enjoys our show and stuff like that.
That'd be awesome to do that.
That would be amazing to do that. I know, like the one in For the Love of Horror and stuff. I saw a few people last year that were there, so I don't know whether that's one, but yeah, it depends on what people can do. But that sounded awesome. So thank you, and this has been our review of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Tell us your thoughts. Rob, you normally do this bit.
Yeah, I normally do this bit. So as always, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and now on TikTok at CMTH Podcast. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, make sure to hit the subscribe button and leave us a lovely review. And make sure you go and check Simon and Lee out on So I Married a Horror Fan podcast. And we will see you next week.